Good evening, I'm Lucy Noland.
And I'm Greg Hurst. We are beginning tonight with an important investigative series. The question, just how safe is our drinking water?
What we've uncovered shocked even us and left us with a ton of questions, so we started digging.
It took months, but we examined thousands of state water quality tests.
And Chief I-Team reporter Mark Greenblatt discovered, believe it or not, radiation in many local water systems. Mark?
Greg, Lucy, every day we're exposed to radiation, whether it's from sunlight or other natural sources. And health scientists say that's usually okay. The problem, they say, is when you drink it, taking it inside your body, where it can do real harm.
It's not acceptable.
Felicia Byford.
This is really disturbing.
And neighbor Corrine Tolbert.
This is horrific, really.
Have just learned they have a serious problem.
And I mean, you're talking about mutation and radiation.
That's right, radiation in the water their kids are playing in and that they've been drinking. All supplied by their water provider, Municipal Utility District number 105. Radiation in amounts over recommended health standards, and in recent times, even over federal legal limits.
Do you feel like you've been adequately informed?
No.
But for the scientists at this state lab, it's no surprise at all. Because after testing the water from communities in Harris County and across the state, they know that radioactive water isn't just in Corrine and Felicia's neighborhood, but in other Harris County community water systems and throughout Texas. And one type of radiation that keeps turning up, it's called the alpha particle.
The alpha particle, this is the 800-pound gorilla of radioactive particles.
He's Dr. David Ozanoff, a nationally known expert on drinking water and health, based out of Boston University's School of Public Health.
You know, it can't penetrate very far, but when it hits something, it does a ferocious amount of damage.
And he says drinking water with alpha is a real risk.
If I were to drink it, then many parts of your body are within knife-wielding distance of an alpha particle.
And Ozanoff says that can damage your DNA. And drink enough of them over a period of years, and your risk goes up for
the disease that we call cancer.
In fact, even the EPA says a single alpha passing through a cell is sufficient to induce a mutational event, which is why Ozanoff and other scientists recommend 0 alpha in your water.
Because all you need is one cell to go bad.
Which brings us back to Mud 105. You see, for years, the state's own tests show its drinking water had significant amounts of radioactive alpha particles, with enough in 2008 and 2009 to violate the EPA's federal legal limit, something the MUD mentioned in these 2 annual water quality reports as a problem with alpha emitters. But our mothers say not good enough.
Screw the fine print. Something this serious, I don't care. It should be mandatory that everybody in this district knows what's going on.
And we asked Professor Ozanoff.
Do you think most people have any idea what alpha activity really means?
I'm confident they don't.
I don't think there's reason for panic.
Taylor Goodall is Mud 105's lawyer.
Do you think the average Joe knows that there's radiation in your water?
Well, I can't necessarily speak for the average Joe, but I know that we've sent out mailers.
Mailers like this one that disclose the radiation problem, but also told residents that it's not an emergency and you don't have to switch water supplies. Why not? Goodall says Mud 105 reduced pumping water from its most radioactive well, but admits it has not been taken offline completely and won't be until the mud can switch entirely to surface water, which might take years.
Scientists would say exposure to this amount of radiation over a number of years leads to an increased risk of cancer in your community. Does that concern you?
Any issues of public health do concern me, but what I'm saying is...
But you're saying there's no reason to panic.
There isn't a reason to panic. I'm firm in my belief that there's not a reason to panic.
To which one of our mothers had an interesting response.
You come live here, you come drink this water, and then you tell me how you feel in 2 years.
But Mud 105 isn't alone. All over Harris County, state water tests show alpha particles in Municipal Utility District 238, Mud 23, the city of Katy, and hundreds of others, like the suburban mobile home park, with enough alpha particle radiation in its well water to violate the law 3 years in a row. And yet the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ, has allowed that water well to remain in use for years.
TCEQ is always first for protecting human health.
TCEQ's Linda Brookins oversees water safety and supply for the entire state of Texas. She says the chance of getting cancer from alpha radiation is very unlikely.
This is a naturally occurring element.
I understand it's a naturally occurring element, but just because it's naturally occurring doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to hurt you.
We asked her about something else we uncovered.
What would you tell me if I have talked to numerous scientists across the nation that would say that what TCEQ did was bad science?
Well, I guess I have no comment on that.
But you'll probably be talking with plenty of comments tomorrow night at 10 when in part 2 of our series we reveal how state officials may have been part of what one expert calls a possible cover-up of radiation readings in water all across Texas. Lucy, Greg.
So I'm sitting here, Greg's sitting here, everybody who's watching is going, what about my water supply? How do I find out if my water is safe?
You know what, we've been working very, very hard to answer that question. And if you want to check up on your own water system, we've put together something to help you do just that. Just go to khou.com where you can now look up how much radiation state testing discovered in your water. Just type in the name of your water company and you'll get your info. And join us again tomorrow night at 10 for part 2 of our water quality investigation.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Has the state government misled Texans about the amount of radiation in drinking water?
Last night we told you about local communities that, according to state testing, have radioactive tap water.
But now it turns out some of those readings may actually be even worse.
And that's because Chief Investigative Reporter Mark Greenblatt has discovered that state officials have lowered those results for years, and they've been misinforming the public about how much radiation they were literally drinking in. Fill us in, Mark.
Greg, Lucy, you and I depend on the regular police to keep us safe from burglars and others who can do us harm. But we discovered that the people who are supposed to police radiation in your drinking water and protect you haven't been telling you the whole truth for decades. It says that in the Federal Register. It tells you not to do this. Did TCEQ just skip over that section?
She's Linda Brookins of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality.
I think I've told you already. We have been evaluated by EPA in the past prior to 2008, and we had no findings.
Where Brookins oversees drinking water quality for all of Texas.
So because they didn't catch you breaking that advice, that makes it okay. Is that the right way to do this kind of thing?
We were not hiding anything.
So what's going on? Well, it has to do with radiation in the water these mothers have been drinking.
This is horrific, really.
And giving to their children.
And I mean, you're talking about mutation and radiation.
On Tuesday, we first introduced you to these residents who get their water from Harris County Municipal Utility District number 105, which violated federal legal limits for radiation 2 years in a row. It's one of hundreds of water providers in our area and around the state where state labs have detected a particularly dangerous form of radiation in the water you drink, alpha radiation.
The alpha particle, this is the 800-pound gorilla of radioactive particles.
Dr. David Ozanoff is a nationally known expert on drinking water and health. And he says drinking water with alpha can cause problems.
When it hits something, it does a ferocious amount of damage.
And although the chances are low, he says drink enough alpha over enough time and your risk goes up for
the disease that we call cancer.
But ask TCEQ.
This is a naturally occurring element.
I understand it's a naturally occurring element, but just because it's naturally occurring doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to hurt you.
And these moms say the state needs a reality check.
That just shows me that they do not care.
But what has them even more concerned is something else we uncovered that brings into question everything TCEQ has been telling Texans about radiation in their water for decades.
What would you tell me if I have talked to numerous scientists across the nation that would say that what TCEQ did was bad science?
Well, I guess I have no comment on that.
So what's the problem? You see, long ago, folks here at the EPA's headquarters set the record straight when it comes to how states are supposed to warn you when they find radiation that can cause cancer in the very water that you drink. The trouble is, we've discovered that Texas regulators didn't listen and instead underreported radiation readings for years, letting some water systems avoid violations, even allowing the radiation to continue to flow.
He's top water quality scientist and toxicologist, Dr. Joshua Hamilton, and he took a look at what we uncovered.
You're not really getting an accurate picture of what your health risk might be, nor does your community really know what the actual exposures are.
Take Mud 105. For the last 20 years, with the subtractions, it only was cited for 2 radiation violations in 2008 and 2009. But take away the bad math, and it actually had 12 times that it went over the legal limit for radiation. Warning signs that were missed for decades, and the whole thing makes Hamilton suspicious.
I don't see how it could be accidental.
The word that comes up in my mind is cover-up.
And Dr. Rosenoff goes further.
It sure looks that way.
Don't you understand that by subtracting off the margin of error, you have real impact on the people that live there? Because if a water system doesn't get a violation, they won't fix the problem.
I do not believe that what TCEQ was doing at that time has impacted human health.
In fact, even after the EPA published this federal rule in 2000 banning the practice, the TCEQ kept right on subtracting, lowering water radiation scores across the state, until this EPA audit finally put a halt to it 9 years later.
Did you happen to skip over page 76727 of the federal rule? Because right in here in 2000, EPA told you, don't subtract from margin of error. Did you skip that part?
It doesn't say not to subtract.
It doesn't.
It is silent.
I'd like you to go ahead and hold this in your hand for a moment and read the part that's underlined in blue.
I'm not going to do that on camera.
Well, just in case you wanted to read for yourself what she wouldn't, we've posted the entire section of that 2000 federal rule online at khou.com. And is there radiation in your water, if you want to know? Well, you can find that out also on our website, where we've created an easy-to-use searchable database of the state's radiation testing results, covering every water system in Texas for the last 6 years. Just type in your own water provider's name to find out what the state found.
So we search the database and we find excessive levels of radiation in our water supply. What can we do?
A lot of people are asking that question. I brought some things to help you with that. If you have one of these at home, this is a faucet-mounted filter. It's not going to work, Greg. This is a charcoal filter. This also will get a lot of stuff out, but not radiation. So what you've got to do, we're told by scientists, is to actually purchase one of these home-mounted kits.
Heavy-duty.
Heavy-duty equipment. It comes with a big tank. You put it underneath your kitchen counter. It's called reverse osmosis. The reverse osmosis kits can get out 98% of the radiation that will come into your door if your utility won't do it for you. So this stuff works. Costs about $140. It ranges on up well in advance of that, depending on what you want to do in your family.
All right, well, it gets out 98%, but I keep going back to the one scientist saying we should have 0% of radiation in our water to be safe.
This will help you get there.
And still more to come Monday.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
See you then. Thanks,
Bye.
Mark.